Hello and welcome everyone to the Terminology Leading Practices stream of the SNOMED CT Expo 2021. My name is Monica Harry and I'm the Director of Content and Mapping at SNOMED International, and I will be moderating today's session. Just a reminder to please use the live Q&A in your AirTouch device to type your questions to the presenter. And all the questions will be answered at the conclusion of the presentation. I'm now pleased to introduce Ole Våge and Lars Johnson from the Norwegian Directory for eHealth. Ole and Lars will be presenting Using Corporate Linguistics, How to Enhance Term Quality in SNOMED CT. Over to you, Ole and Lars.
Thank you, Monica. Like you said, I'm Ole Våge, and I represent the Norwegian Directory for eHealth, which is the National Release Center, the NRC in Norway. And I will go through his presentation with Lars. First, a few words on the background. Large parts of SNOMED CT are being translated into Norwegian by Helseplattformen, which belongs to the Central Norway Regional Health Authority, with the cooperation of us, the Norwegian NRC. The quality of the translations is of great importance, of course. The Norwegian terminology should be precise, consistent, and recognizable. While precision and consistency are necessary conditions for high-quality translations, in this presentation, we will focus on the issue of recognizability. Clinicians should be able to find and use terms in SNOMED CT which they are used to in their professional activities. Now, clinicians, they're not a homogeneous group. Concerning terminology, they show preference to different synonyms based on different education, specialization, institution, age, communication context, etc. The case of thorax illustrates this point. Some clinicians prefer the Greek-Latin word thorax, like we see here. Some, the Norwegian spelling thorax, without the H but with a K. And others prefer the somewhat more colloquial word brystkasse. Now, term variation as a subject matter has been studied in linguistics, especially in the subdiscipline of terminology, as these references show, like Feisha from the University of Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona, Christensen here in Norway. What they have in common, and what is really important for us, is that they used corpus linguistics, and that it's analyzing large volumes of texts of specialized language. Addressing the question of recognizability in Norway, we are drawing on the insights and methods from corpus linguistics in order to answer which terms to include as synonyms, and of these, which term to select as the preferred Norwegian term, and how do the terms behave in the vicinity of other terms, for example, with which adjectives go to which terms. So in order to answer these questions, I pass the word to Lars.
Yes, I'm Lars Johnson, and I work at the National Library of Norway, which has started the digitization of the whole of the Norwegian cultural heritage in terms of books. Whatever is written or published is then digitized and stored at some place in Norway, and it's also undergoing OCR treatment so that the text can be presented and searched. So at the moment, we have approximately 3 million newspapers, a little bit more than that, 600,000 books, which actually per day contains everything that's published in Norway, and 80,000 periodicals. So the periodicals are lagging a little bit behind, but the process is ongoing. So you'll get more and more information as you go along. Next. And so here's a picture of what it might look like if you go to the National Library's homepage. Now then you can ask for a set of books. So here I actually search for the term thorax, as Ole mentioned. And what you will see then are the list of books. So here it's a list of books, so a subset of the documents. And what you see now is the books they have on the left-hand side are some of the metadata. So all the books, they come with the title and all the metadata that are associated with books that you have, for example, in from the National Bibliography. So that all the stuff like due numbers and subject headings are part of it and make it possible to search and create your own corpus. So I will talk about more of that later. But when you see the books, they are, some of them have this I with the slash over. That means that not everything is readable everywhere. So it means that only a certain part of the books are readable. But if you have access to the books, so most of research institutions have that access, while others don't. So if you go to the next slide, and you can see that you can actually open the book and look. So here I have searched for thorax, and if you are squinting a little bit, you will see a yellow mark on that page, which actually mark it. And so that the search term is ready, you can browse through the book via these search terms. And you also get this a kind of a snippet on the right, which gives you the context of the word. And so, but the problem is that this is actually, I think this is also a good tool for a lexicographer to get a lot of context, but we have other ways as well. So if you go to the next slide. The problem what you see is the copyright issues with the documents. So if you work as a lexicographer and you want to access the texts, you don't have readily accessible everything that you want. So usually the most important parts of text, I think, as for a lexicographer, is that you want to have concordances easily available. That would mean keyword in context. That depends how you name it, but you want to look at the word or a phrase and look at the context for that phrase, the immediate context. So we are allowed to show for any book, we can show at least 12 words behind and 12 words after. So basically on the sentence level size, we can show. And in addition, you have trend lines. So I can aggregate the corpus and aggregate everything that's in the text. So some of you may be familiar with the Google Ngram viewer. So we have a similar viewer for all the text, for all the newspapers and all the text that's been digitized. In addition, we also have which are important for seeing what kind of context or co-occurrence aggregations for certain words. In addition to frequency lists, which are very important, let's say, for doing document term matrices and do analysis of words across several documents. So if you can now start by looking at the trend line. So next slide, Ole. So if you look at the trend line for the words that Ole mentioned for thorax, so you can see the orange line is thorax, the Greek Latin word, and then you have the thorax, the Norwegian spelling, and also have the brystkasse, which is basically the same as chest in English. So it's the same word. And now we see that the trends are clearly that you see that chest is used a lot, but we know that the words thorax and these spellings, they belong to the medical literature mostly. So we can also do a search do the plot across a particular subset of words. So if we go to the next slide, then we do the same exercise, but now we are looking at the books or the books that are classified for the heading medicine, which is the same as medicine. So everything that's been marked for medicine is now taken into account, and we don't look at anything else. And now we see that for this one, as Ole mentioned, you can use this trend line as a kind of advisor or a part of the decision what should we add into the lexicon or what should be left out. And then you see also that chest is has a continuous trend, while the Norwegian spelling is a little bit, but they compete a little bit, chest and the Norwegian spelling. While thorax, the Greek Latin is the clear winner here, which is part of can be part of the decision process. So if you go further, next slide, you can look at actually the building of a corpus. So the examples on beforehand, what we see is actually building a corpus outside in. So you can build a corpus by looking at properties of the metadata. So you cannot choose then the particular words that the document has, or then or other properties like subject headings and Dewey, title. What are in the title? Is it a book? Is it a periodical, and so on? And so you can build a corpus from a set of properties and then go down and then do, let's say, for example, aggregations. The other ways of building a corpus is actually building it from you start with those, but you actually are interested in the particular documents. So you can start with these documents. I want to have documents, let's say, everything that's in the periodicals plus this and that. So these are the two ways of doing it, and we have the methods for doing all the statistics and everything for both ways. So, which is, I think it's an important part of corpus building. So the one is the inside out, and the other is outside in. From metadata to particulars, and from particulars to a class, which might not be describable using metadata. So you can look at the next slide. And you can take also just look at this. So this is a corpus, which is a collection of documents. So it's usually for a specific purpose. So in this one, I've only looked at 3 columns. So one column is named URN, one is title, and one is year. But you have all the columns, they contain every information you want. So place of publication, language, where it's translated from, and so on, if it's translated. But the important column here is the URN. So the URN is part of when the library digitizes a document, every image that's digitized is associated with a URN, which stands for Universal Resource Name. So it's part like a URL is the address of a document, the URN is then the name of the document. So that name will then is persistent, so it's supposed to be connected to that particular document for years to come, 100,000 years or whatever, as long as this technology is alive. So that will mean that everything we do, when you build a corpus and you have a set of documents, they are actually not identified as a set of text files, but it's identified as a set of URNs. So that's how we deal with it. And so we have an API so that you can do all the searches today or tomorrow or in 10 years, it will get the same results. You don't have to worry about taking care of files on the disk and so on. So that's an important part of the corpus building. And with the corpus building, then we can then analyze and look at words. So if you take the next example, next slide, we will now look at 4 Norwegian terms. And this is it's called in English, it's called contus, it's a corner of the eye. And so we're looking at 3 different ways of referring to that corner of the eye in Norwegian. So one is the word contus itself. The other is contus, which is like a Norwegian spelling variant, parallel to the thorax. Another is øyekrok, which is the eye corner. And the other is øyevinkel, which is the eye angle. So these are the 4 terms we can then study. So if you go to the next slide, you will see then now that the Norwegian variant of contus actually has almost no use at all. So it's just sporadic. And you see the numbers you see here is actually the actual frequencies. So you see that these are actually small frequency words, and they are all taken from this particular corpus of journals from the medical journal of the Medical Association. And then we see that the contus word is basically on the same level as the 2 others. So they are actually competing with each other. And so what we can then do is, what is an interesting exercise is to see what kind of properties to these word set. And one thing of doing that is going through, so and I will just take you through sort of the, what they call the hermeneutics of sort of the analysis that's, which I think is good for a lexicographer, that you have the particular, you have an aggregation, and then you go into examples. So the next slide. So here we have concordances for the word contus, and I indicated with orange the words that which is the medial or medial in Norwegian, and also internus, which is the contus internus. And so it's interesting that the words medial and lateral, they are sort of overlapping with the terms internus and externus, or external, the outer part of the eye and the inner part of that the nose, which is the part closest to the outside. So then if you go to the next slide, we can then, after you have looked at the concordances, then we can aggregate the concordances behind the scene and then do a statistics on the concordances. And then I can look at what words are appearing close and away from the words. And now we can see then that the two Norwegian words, they are kind of for locating, for example, the place in the eye or the contus. It's only used with medial and lateral, while contus itself is used with medial, lateral, and also the internus and externus, or the internal and external. So it's kind of more like redundancy when you use contus. You have more ways of actually expressing the placement when compared to the Norwegian. But as you see, the frequencies are almost the same. So, but this is part of the analysis, let's say, for a lexicographer, and this gives information to the lexicographer about these words. But in order to, so this is not part of the decision. So of course the data doesn't make the decision for you, but it gives you the summary of the data. So in order to answer this, we need actually more. So if you can go to the next slide. So we want to expand the corpus. So with specialized journals and maybe patient journals and so on, and even more. So I give the word to Ole on this one.
Thank you, Lars. Yeah, that's right. This is an ongoing project, and we are very happy that several Norwegian specialized journals in medicine are contributing with their texts to us, and we're working on including these texts into our corpus. And we also want to use or include texts from the patient journals. We think that that's really important in order to decide for Norwegian terms which are recognizable for clinicians. Relating to the usage of corpus, we are looking further into the issues of concordances, as Lars has shown us. We are also looking into topic modeling, that is, which terms are used in different settings or contexts, opening up for a certain differentiation. And we also would like to explore whether we can do automatic term extraction from the corpora in the future somehow. And wrapping up, as a whole, we believe that corpus linguistics will contribute to enhance the term quality of SNOMED CT, at least when doing translation into Norwegian. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Lars and Ole, for a very informative presentation. Now, can I ask attendees that you give us a moment while we switch over from our pre-recorded content so that Ole and Lars can address the questions you've been submitting live. And please note this session will be available on the event platform for the next 3 months. Thank you. So thanks again, Ole and Lars, for a great presentation. Boy, that's tons of work you've been doing, and it's much appreciated. So a couple of questions have come in. I'll ask the question and then I'll let you decide who wants to give the answer. So would the use of a text corpora make medical dictionaries obsolete when you're translating SNOMED?
Maybe I could answer that question, Lars, if that's okay with you. No, it doesn't really. Medical dictionaries are important in the translation process, which has to be concept-based, of course. And what typically a medical dictionary would provide us are suggestions of terms, candidates for terms. Now, among these, we have to decide which are in use, for example, and which one should be marked as preferred. And we think that this comes afterwards. When you have the list of Norwegian terms, then you have to see to which extent they are used. For example, there is something called in linguistics hapax. We actually see that some terms in the dictionaries are only found in the dictionaries. They're not used at all. So by using corpus linguistics, we can detect these terms, and we would not include them, of course, because they are not used. That's one part of the issue. There's another part also, and that is using this corpus linguistics. It can also help us to provide even more synonyms than a medical dictionary would provide. For example, by going through a corpus, there are some words, keywords, phrases which can help us. For example, the phrase "also known as" or "also named," etc. And these can provide us with more candidates. Of course, we have to be careful with synonyms and have to check the SNOMED hierarchy if this is if they are real synonyms, of course. But it's one of several resources when you're doing the translation.
Okay, thank you. And there's one other question that has come in from Cyprian Virgil. It's can a person build a corpus from the NB data and then download it locally?
I can answer that one. No, in general, you can't download it locally, but you can do, as I said in the presentation, what you can do is access everything. And while, of course, reading the papers, you have to have a Norwegian IP address, while these information you get from it, like the concordances and the collocations and, let's say, topic models, they are free wherever you are, so you can work from anywhere. So, but in general, if some of the texts are relieved of the copyright issues, they can be downloaded. But otherwise, everything has to be done via the API. And usually that's powerful enough for most purposes, I think, in general.
Okay, there's another question, but the text is very small, so bear with me. I have to move it over to my own system and make it bigger so I can read it. It's tiny. So the same, and again, Cyprian Virgil asks, do you also use corpus linguistic annotation pipelines, i.e. part of speech, semantic annotation, etc., in order to compile specialized corpora?
I can answer to that. In general, we have a pipeline. So usually, so that the base, so when you access the text, they are in general, they won't be tagged or anything or have a part of speech. But what you can do, what you have set up is that so that you have an interoperability with, let's say you have a tagger, part of speech, or a parser. You can take the concordances that you get out or ask for whole sentences and parse them and then process that further. So let's say if you have a keyword, for example, and you search that the concordances for that or a set of words, 1,000 words for that matter, you get all the concordances, you parse them, and do a processing further. And that we have a pipeline for. Or we set up a pipeline if you need one. So the answer to that is sort of yes and half yes. So, but the difference is whether you do it on the server, since the text are accessed on the server. So on the server, we only have the basic data, and we do the processing on the client, most of the processing on the client side. But you look into more and more, and if it's necessary to do it also on the clients or on the server side. Yes. So.
Okay, thank you. And same again, another question, but one sec while I just enlarge the text so I can read it. It's not me, it's not my glasses, it's just the text is very small. How does corpus linguistics conform to healthcare standardization, harmonization of data? And that was from Rachel Krajnik, and apologies if I don't pronounce your name properly.
Oh, maybe Ole, you can answer that.
Yeah, that was a difficult question. To be honest, I'm not able to answer that right now. I think could you send me send it by email to me or some, because I have to look further into that, actually, to be honest.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Is your email, are the emails available for people? I guess they will be in the program.
Yeah,
Okay.
at my profile.
So you just email your
be.
question, Rachel. That way, Ole can
Yeah,
answer you.
please. Yeah, please do that. Yeah.
One other question. Are there resources other than digitalized content from a national library that can be used to create a corpus?
Well, the answer to that, it's very no, there isn't. So this corpus is it's based on the digitized material, but you won't miss anything. so that everything is digitized. So that in that sense, so we know that. But of course, we are trying to accommodate if someone has, let's say, has something digitized and you want to search in it, we try to accommodate that, and we are setting up pipelines for doing the metadata. But for now, the metadata is very connected to sort of the way the data is processed at the National Library, so that you have the URN, for example, associated with the image, and from the image you have the optical character recognition, and so on. So we are very into that process, and everything is attached to that one. So in that sense, the answer is not a definite no, but it's basically that's where our focus is like.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Does anyone else have a final or another question before the session wraps up? Hearing none. Okay, well, in that case, it just leaves me to say thank you once again for an excellent presentation. Really, really good information, and makes me think about the work we do in SNOMED every day and the impact we have on translation. It's something we need to think about carefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.